Fanatec has launched its latest steering wheel, an officially Porsche licensed Gran Turismo special. But should you buy it? This is called, and I'm going to have to think about this, the Fanatec CSL Elite Steering Wheel Vision Gran Turismo, I think. And it's just gone on sale for €350 or $440 at the time of recording. Who knows what it'll be in 2 weeks. Now, given that price point and its CSL Elite nomenclature, you can kind of see where this wheel sits on the market. It's not entry level, but it's also not the highest of the high, premium, expensive offering. And I think that gives it a good chance to be very popular if it proves to be good. Now, the existing McLaren CSL Elite wheels by Fanatec are very popular because they're low in price, but they're very high in value. This wheel is a little bit different though. It's not a basic GT3 style steering wheel. It's actually based on a car that can be found in Gran Turismo, but it's a bit of a special case. Let me explain. Vision Gran Turismo is a Polyphony Digital initiative which allows real car manufacturers to design concept cars that don't actually exist in real life, but do exist within the world of Gran Turismo. It's been around for quite a long time now. Now, this wheel is not actually brand new to the eye because the cover star of Gran Turismo 7 is the Porsche Vision GT, and that car in the game has this exact steering wheel. So what's essentially happened is Porsche have created a fake car for a video game. Fanatec have then taken that fake car, designed a real steering wheel based on that fake car and that fake steering wheel, created it in real life so that you can then use it on a game. Does that sound confusing? Now, one big benefit to the Vision GT initiative is that you can be creative, and because of that, what we get is a really interesting looking wheel. It's almost futuristic, and it kind of goes with the whole Vision GT idea. It looks really, really cool in my opinion, but it doesn't look like every other GT3 steering wheel. Now, we do see lots of steering wheels that look very similar, round-shaped, D-shaped, GT3 style, Formula style, whatever it is, and this just isn't the same. In fact, the only steering wheel that I can think of that has a similar shape that I've at least experienced is the Thrustmaster Hypercar wheel. So we've actually got a Thrustmaster Hypercar wheel here, and as you can see, they are fairly similar in shape. They're also fairly similar in cost too. The Thrustmaster wheel was around $400 when it was released as well. There are other similarities, of course, as well. They both have red flashes, they've both got handy little buttons, encoders, which we're going to come on to with this Fanatec wheel. So I think it's fairly good to compare the two of these. They both seem relatively similar in many ways, which is interesting because when I first saw this Hypercar wheel, the first thought that came to mind was how unique it was. All of a sudden, here we have Fanatec with its Porsche wheel as well. But enough about this Thrustmaster Hypercar wheel at the moment. We do have a full review on the website, so go and check that out. But this video is focusing on the Stuttgart brand. So being a steering wheel based on a fictional car in a PlayStation game, it's perhaps unsurprising to hear that this is PlayStation compatible as well as PC compatible. You do, of course, need to have a PlayStation compatible wheelbase. Fanatec sell plenty of those, and this steering wheel is compatible with all modern Fanatec direct drive bases. It's also compatible with slightly older bases such as the CSL Elite series, the DD Pro, the CSL DD, and also the Podium wheelbase, which is interesting because with the Podium wheelbase you can have upwards of 20 or even 25 Newton meters of torque. Now, when this wheel is fitted with the QR2, this does actually work with all of those 25 Newton meters. So there's no sort of torque limit to the steering wheel with the QR2 system. You can also switch it out for the older QR1 system as well if you need to. So basically compatibility is pretty good. Now, using this with 25 Newton meters, you also want it to be rigid and solid. And I have to say, there's a little bit of flex there, but nothing unusual for a steering wheel of this type, I would say. It's quite light as well, so it feels strong, light, if not completely solid. You may notice on the back of the steering wheel we have Hall sensor magnetic shifters, but no clutch paddle, so that is something to bear in mind. But we've got plenty of buttons and rotary encoders and switches on the front of the wheel as well. I will go into detail on all of these when I'm driving with this wheel in just a few minutes, but you've got 6 regular small pushable plastic buttons there. You've also got a couple of integrated buttons within the actual rim itself, which is the first time Fanatec have done that. You've got a pressable Porsche emblem in the middle, which opens up a tuning menu, which you can actually make adjustments that will show up on this little screen here. Yes, that is actually a little screen that shows telemetry. You can use it to change settings. We will go into all of that. There is also a funky switch on the bottom with lots of different potential inputs you can use there. You've got these rotary switches on the bottom, a couple of them, and rotary encoders. Interestingly enough, 4 of these. You've got one on the left and one on the right, which are within a thumb's reach. You've also got these 2 down at the bottom. It'll be interesting to see how that actually works in reality. So why don't we throw this on the rig and give it a go. Before we start driving, let's just talk about how it actually feels when you're roaming the menus on Gran Turismo, for instance. So obviously, this being a PlayStation compatible steering wheel designed with Gran Turismo in mind, obviously designed from Gran Turismo essentially, you would think it would be super functional when it came to playing this very game. And it's pretty good. There are buttons that work. You've got the funky switches obviously for going up, down, left and right. That's all fine. You've got your L1, L2, R1, R2, things like that. You don't have a kind of regular X, square, circle and triangle layout, however. You've got these 6 small buttons on the wheel, which feel nice to press and they're easy to access, but obviously it's not clear immediately which button does what, so you kind of have to just get used to that. We're going to jump in our Porsche Vision GT, which of course is the car that uses this particular steering wheel. And when I'm using a menu in Gran Turismo, I mean, it is very easy to just pick up a controller and, I don't know, it's something that you guys will probably be familiar with. If you have a controller next to you, it's probably going to be useful to just pick it up and use that instead, but you can at least use the wheel if you need to. Right, let's do some laps around Deep Forest Raceway and see how this wheel actually feels. Now, the first thing, of course, to note is the width, 310mm. So it is wider than your average sim racing wheel, but I have to say in recent times, I think wider wheels have become sort of normal, and it doesn't actually feel as wide as it looks. It's just got a really funky shape. And I mean, the obvious thing, of course, as you can see on screen right now, the actual steering wheel I'm holding in my hands matches exactly the steering wheel in the game, because of course, this wheel is designed based off of the wheel that's actually designed for the game, which is very, very cool as a concept. A bit weird and almost a bit pointless in some ways, but cool. Now, obviously, this isn't a traditional shape for a steering wheel either. It's not round, it's not D-shaped, it's not a Formula style, not a GT3 style. It's sort of a kind of futuristic spaceship yoke sort of feel to it. I don't know. It's weird. I have to say though, I actually really like it. I think it looks really cool. It's not super versatile. Like, I don't think you would want to use the steering wheel for rallying or drifting or anything like that, because when you actually lose the car, it's kind of tricky to catch, just because of obviously, you know, the shape of it, the different places you can actually put your hands to get a good grip. But it looks cool, and when you're doing circuit racing in a regular car that you can keep under control, which this Vision GT sort of isn't, funnily enough, it's pretty good. I have no complaints really about the shape in this specific scenario. Now, the material itself used on the rim is something Fanatec are calling Tactaris. It's their first ever Tactaris steering wheel, and it's basically a form of microfiber-based synthetic suede. It looks a bit like Alcantara, it feels a bit like Alcantara, but it is microfiber and it's Fanatec's own thing. I have to say I'm really impressed with it. I really like the feel of it, I like the look of it. So far, I've not been driving a huge amount with this wheel, we've only got it very recently, but it's not leaving any black marks on my hand, for example. I don't think the actual look of the wheel is, you know, it's not looking worn in any way. You wouldn't expect that in a very short space of time, but the main thing for me is it's comfortable, it feels nice, it feels like a proper racing car steering wheel. So Tactaris gets a tick from me in the short term. It's also the first Fanatec wheel to use Hall sensor magnetic shifters. It's all fully integrated into the system, so these aren't adjustable as far as I can tell, but I have to say I really do like the feel of them. I'm not really going to be able to demonstrate it with this Vision Gran Turismo car because it's an electric automatic, but what I can tell you, because I have driven this on iRacing with an old Formula 1 car, done plenty of shifting and actually like how it feels. It's a little bit on the loud side, it's a bit clacky, but it's very clear, it's very intuitive. You know when you've done a proper shift or when you've messed up a shift, and to be honest, I haven't messed up many shifts with this. They feel relatively basic, and obviously, without being adjustable, you have to kind of like how they are by default, but I don't really have many complaints, to be honest. I do think the shifters feel nice. And to be honest, this is kind of a general theme that I'm discovering with the steering wheel. Lots of the stuff on it isn't super fancy, although it kind of looks fancy because of the futuristic styling. It feels sort of compromised in terms of quality, but then when I actually go to use the buttons and the shifters and all these things, they're just in handy places and they actually feel pretty satisfying and pretty decent. So obviously you're saving a little bit of money on the cost because this is a CSL Elite range steering wheel. It's not the premium top of the range stuff. But at the same time, the feeling you get from it is perfectly adequate and quite pleasant on most occasions. I mean, that translates to the rest of the buttons as well. These small buttons in the middle, yes, they're small. Yes, they feel a little bit on the cheap side, but they're very easy to press. They're also easy to feel, whether you're wearing gloves or not, so you can tell which one it is you're pressing. Obviously, when I'm driving a Gran Turismo, I don't really need to be pressing these very often, although I can obviously change my camera view there. And it's a similar story with the rotary encoders as well. I mean, the positioning here is perfect for your thumb, both on the left and right. Very easy to change. You can see here in Gran Turismo, the right-hand side adjusts the brake balance immediately. All feels tactile, feels purposeful. Again, just no complaints at all. There's also the two rotary encoders on the bottom, and with these ones, I mean, it's always good to have more options, especially like if you're playing a PC game, for instance, and you want to try and assign as many different buttons as you can. It's handy to have the extra buttons, but I would say these are slightly more awkward to access. So in Gran Turismo, by default, it affects the adjust the traction control setting, but you kind of need to lift your hand off the steering wheel to change them while you're driving, which isn't ideal, but it gives you more options at least. What I would also say is when you're losing the car, which I have done several times, you do actually find yourself sometimes grabbing the wheel here, and I have found myself using my palm to turn that encoder by accident during a big slide. I mean, if you're sliding or crashing, the encoder is probably the least of your worries, but I just thought I should point it out anyway. One thing I do really like are these two buttons on the actual rim itself. Now that's not something you see often. It's the first time Fanatec have done that as well with their steering wheel, so there's a lot of firsts with this wheel. But these two buttons feel nice, they've got a nice click to them, very easy to press. They represent L2 and R2 on PlayStation, but on PC I'm sure you can assign them to whatever you want. And they're in just such a useful position. They're very difficult to press by accident, which I think is important if you're going to put the buttons where your hands go. They're nice and high up, but you can reach them easily with your thumb, press them away, no problem at all, and I just really like the sound and the feel of that, so for me they're a big positive. Now something else I've noticed with this wheel, the way you grip it, obviously it having its own sort of unique shape, it does mean that your hands end up in slightly different positions to what they would in other wheels, and there's spokes coming out of the central section here, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So when you actually rest your thumbs, yes, you've got a sort of indent in the moulding here, which feels quite nice to rest your thumb in, but actually when you start relaxing your thumb slightly, you do find it resting on what I would call a bit of a parcel shelf here at the top. Essentially, there's a thick bit of metal that essentially creates a flat platform, and what you find is naturally, as you're driving along, you're shifting in a natural position, you do end up resting your thumb, both your left and your right thumb, on these sort of flat sections. And I actually don't mind that. I think it's quite a nice spot. It doesn't feel uncomfortable, but I do think over a long stint, that might begin to cause you a little bit of an issue in terms of friction, in terms of just, you know, the actual hardness of the material, for instance. So I'm not 100% convinced that that's going to be great over a long run, but it's not the end of the world, I would definitely say that. Just realised that by using these buttons, I turned my indicators on, so the car's been driving around with indicators on for the last few laps. That's fantastic. I'll quickly go over the rest of the buttons before I come to the telemetry and the settings screen, because that is interesting. Basically, you've got this Fanatec funky switch at the bottom, which is useful because, like any good funky switch, it goes up, it goes down, it goes left, it goes right. You can click it, you can spin it. It basically does everything you want it to. That is great for accessing menus and being able to function on that. But what I would say is because it does so many different things at once, you do find it, you know, a little fiddly, a little sensitive. It's very easy to accidentally press the wrong thing or twist instead of rotating, you know, or whatever it might be. An accidental activation on that button is going to happen at some point. And then finally on here, of course, you have the rotary switches at the bottom. You also have a little number so you can tell what setting is actually being selected. You can click between them like that, and you can also actually adjust how that switch works, whether it works as an encoder, whether it works as a pulse, and that can all be done via a tuning menu, which can be accessed, this is cool, by pressing the Porsche crest at the center of the wheel. So by pressing that, it brings up a tuning menu on the bottom right here. So within this tuning menu, there are presets. So we've got here sets 1 to 5. We've also got one that's A set. Don't quite know what that means, maybe automatic, I'm not sure. Either way, within these presets, if we use the funky switch to scroll to the right, you can adjust all of your force feedback and rotation settings that you could normally do via Fanatec software on PC. Now, bear in mind, this is a steering wheel sort of designed with Gran Turismo in mind, with console compatibility, of course, on PlayStation, and you can't download Fanatec software and make those adjustments on PlayStation in the same way that you can on PC. With this tuning menu, however, you can. So here, for instance, I can use the funky switch to change the sensitivity, basically the rotation that's allowed. I can keep that on automatic, I can lower it, I can change the force feedback strength. And interestingly, when I was doing this on PC as well, as I adjusted the setting here via the tuning menu on the steering wheel, it also adjusted in real time within the Fanatec software, so clearly it does the same thing. And this is excellent, because essentially what I've done here is unlocked a whole bunch of force feedback settings for Gran Turismo 7 for a Fanatec wheelbase, which you may have not had access to with certain other wheelbases. Some of them you may have been able to, but I've never been able to with this DD Pro, for instance. You can adjust force feedback scale, the damping, friction, inertia, interpolation, intensity, force effects, spring effects, dampener effects, everything. You could even adjust here I think that's the multi-position switch mode, is what I'm going to guess that stands for. And you can set it between auto, constant, pulse, and encoder. So that changes how these switches actually function too, which is a really nice touch, because in sim racing, it's good to have all of that adjustability and customization. You can even change braking forces. So that's very, very cool. Once you're happy with your setup, you click the Porsche emblem, and away it pops, and then suddenly this screen becomes a speedometer. I can now see my speed in miles per hour, and as I change gear, which I'm not doing because I'm driving an electric car with one gear, but when I change gear in a normal manual car, you can actually see as well which gear you're in. When I was using this on iRacing on PC, it didn't show me a speed, but it did show me what gear I was in. It even flashed at me when the pit lane speed limiter was active or when I was hitting my rev limiter. So that little screen, it's not in a great position to be able to see it while driving, but it does give you some interesting information. So all in all, there is a lot to like when using this steering wheel. I mean, it's got big, chunky, comfy grips with a nice material. Yes, it's wide, but it doesn't feel too wide. The buttons are in good positions, and although they don't all feel super premium, they're pretty useful. Nice and tactile on the most part. You've got lots of adjustments. You maybe don't have quite as many buttons as you would on a very expensive premium wheel that's maybe more useful for the top end of sim racing. You've also got a few issues with integration with Gran Turismo 7 potentially, but the shifters feel nice, the encoders feel nice, the tuning menu's helpful as well. I like the Porsche emblem, I like the look of it. Yeah, it's pretty good. This Vision GT Porsche, by the way, is absolutely mental. It's ridiculously fast in a straight line, it doesn't handle, it doesn't brake. Yes, it's a very cool steering wheel. Not a big fan of the car though, sorry Porsche. But what do you think? Do let us know down in the comments below whether you're going to be picking this up or not, whether you like the look of it, or whether it just doesn't float your boat. Also, I should mention while you're down there, in the description, there will be an affiliate link so that you can go to the Fanatec website and buy this wheel. There will also be a non-affiliate version of that link as well, but by clicking the affiliate link, you'll be supporting us. It doesn't change anything about your process. So if you want to buy this wheel, go and check out the links in the description. If you want to see more hardware reviews in future, do subscribe to this Traxion channel and check out the website traxion.gg for the latest news about racing games and of course, sim racing hardware. But until next time, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.